everyone. This is Marjory Wildcraft, of course, right? Yes. And I just wanted to introduce you to somebody I've been following for a while. His name is Bix Weir. And I'm going to tell you, this is like when I first heard about Bix, I was like, this is just crazy. A comic book, the Grand Canyon, like it's insane. But the more I dug into it, the more research I have done into it, and it as in, and of course we live in bizarro world right now, so why
True.
not believe in a comic book published by the Fed? Really. And Bix has a really interesting take of what's going on because we know what's going on is absolutely insane right now. We know they're hyperinflating the dollar; it's going to collapse. We know there's going to be big changes. But Bix actually says that's being done intentionally and that there are really some good guys behind the scenes. So I want to introduce you to Bix, and you might want to start getting addicted to Bix as I have too. And I'm going to let Bix. So Bix has the road to root A theory. And those of you who did not program in Fortran or BASIC like I did, 30 years ago, um, do you want to explain a little bit about root A, first of all?
Sure, absolutely. And I'm very excited to be with your community, a great community, by the way. And all my followers are coming into this community as well. So get ready for a bunch of newbie type questions on all your forums. So I was a banker for 25 years. I was in the banking industry. Most people in the banking industry don't really know what goes on at the upper echelons, but I had in the late 90s, I was put in charge of some financing of very large mining equipment. So I had to learn about gold and silver. And when you go down that path, you learn about fiat money. What is fiat money? What gives money value? And I would say scarcity gives money value, just like it gives anything value.
Yeah.
And so I did a lot of work there. I figured out with the help of a lot of people that the Fed was rigging the markets, and we thought it was the bankers at the beginning. I worked with the Gold Antitrust Action Committee. And then, everybody, everybody's heard the story now. Oh my God, the Fed is bad and they're rigging the markets and blah, blah, blah. And I read, Creature from Jekyll Island, all the books you need to read. And then in a very strange day on January 1st in 2007, apparently I was hungover after having New Year's Eve the night before. I was on the Fed Boston website doing research on their gold positions and things like that. And on that day, they posted a comic book, a teacher's guide, and a pamphlet on banking. And I had no idea that the Fed had comic books, first of all.
Right. Yeah,
right. We're talking the Fed, right?
You're right.
I looked at this Fed comic book. It's about this little girl named Ruda who lives in a world of no color. And then she finds these colored flowers, but everybody's afraid of the big people who might step on Ruda and her family and stuff. I'm like, this is a horrifying comic book for children.
Out of the Federal Reserve.
Out of the Federal Reserve. And why did it have a teacher's guide? So it turns out the entire comic book was about scarcity. And the teacher's guide, posed about 60 different questions with no answers on what to do when you have to switch a monetary system. Basically, the colored flowers were part of the monetary system. You need the golden light in the cobblestone canyon is what they called it. So I was like blown away. I'm like, I need to look deeper into this comic book and why they did this. Because I was full on the Fed bad, Fed bad, Fed bad. And then the more research I did, it was actually released in 1981, back when we were thinking about going on to a gold standard because inflation had hit, 12, 15%. And they released this comic book, and it was all about going back to a gold standard. As a matter of fact, the pamphlet that was released with this on the day had a little girl walking into a bank with 19 gold coins, swapping them for bills. And I'm like, what in the world is going on here? So I did a lot of research into this and ultimately concluded from the original comic book to here that there are people behind the scenes working to destroy the old system, print as much money as possible. That's part of the plan. Print as much money as possible, soaking up all the benefits. You build your roads, your bridges, your military, your houses. Obviously, the housing boom since we went off the gold standard in 71 has been huge. You couldn't have done all this building without unbacked fiat money and the ability to create money out of thin air. But ultimately, the ultimate conclusion to any fiat money is the destruction of that money. Print too much and then implode the system, and then you win. We're the largest debtor in the nation by far. And I think we're at that point now. I'm sure we're at that point now where the end game is upon us, the end game of fiat money, which really started in 1913 with the invention of the Fed. They started the first Federal Reserve notes. They are IOUs. They are not real money. That's when we went off the real asset-backed money to a debt-based money. So that's what the road to Ruda is and does. And I love silver way more than gold because I think there's a lot less of it. I think there's a lot of gold that I've discovered. I think they did discover gold in the Grand Canyon and then locked it up when Woodrow Wilson created the Fed, and it sits there waiting for us. And we have to handle the end game. That's the problem.
So you've covered a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm going to go back to chunk out a few of them. And first of all, it absolutely is a strategy right now, if you can buy productive assets, to borrow as much money as humanly possible, because you'll be paying it back with cheaper and cheaper dollars. That's why it needs to be a productive asset. And there's a very famous story of an industrialist during the Weimar Germany years. I think his last name was Staley. No relation to me, which is originally my family name, but he did that. He bought everything he possibly could, coal mines, train, systems, everything, and just loaded up with as much as he possibly could. The whole currency imploded, and then he ended up having all these tangible productive assets and became just probably one of the most wealthiest industrialists ever. So it is a strategy right now. That's not like go out on your credit card and blow a bunch of money to buy,
and people
wingy
do,
dingies,
people
right?
do
But
that. People
yeah.
do.
And so now you're saying that actually has been a strategy for the last decades, and you kind of can see China doing it. I mean, they've been building all these ghost towns and ghost cities that there's nothing in it, but they're building all this infrastructure. We have definitely been spending a lot of money, and a whole bunch of it on who knows what, space projects and things. So I get that makes sense. But what actually is surprising about it, so you're saying that there's behind this the Fed, and of course, yeah, I've heard the Fed, and definitely spend some time with Griffin on The Creature from Jekyll Island. But you're saying that that's actually an intentional thing, and the purpose of which, because we do have the banking cabal, right? And they really do have us pretty much by the throat, right? Hugely expensive, grossly inefficient system of control. And you're saying that they are intentionally, there are people within the Fed that have been working on this for decades now, to inflate and hyperinflate the currency to collapse it, because that's the only thing that would destroy the banking cabal. Is that pretty much it in a nutshell there?
That is in the nutshell. Absolutely. And I think I've been saying this for 20 years, but everybody's like, oh my God, it's happening so fast. I'm like, wait. There have been people fighting this fight since 1913, even before the creation of our country is filled with the bankers trying to get their hands on us. The first central bank in the United States, the second central bank in the United States. All this goes back to control over what we use as money.
Yeah, wasn't it even Andrew Jackson died on his deathbed because they had tried to create a central bank back then, and he said the best thing I've ever done is stop the bankers. And actually, they basically did everything they could. The guy died in poverty, I understand, because they absolutely did everything they could to destroy him personally. But he had stopped the bankers, and that was what he felt. And of course, we didn't. Nobody else has accomplished that since then. So,
well, I don't know. It'll be interesting. Well, Joe Biden. Now everybody's going to laugh when I say this.
Yeah,
Joe Biden has been the best for the end of the banks because he's created more money than anybody else. But every single president behind him created more money. A couple lied, like Clinton lied about how much he created, but it goes all the way back. The plan all along was to destroy the old system, get back to our constitutional money, which is gold and silver as money.
do you think that
can't lose anything else, use anything
do you
else?
think the bankers see this? I mean, aren't they loading up on cryptos and of course precious metals, cryptos? I think there'll be a combination of things that survive the US dollars, but I mean, they're pretty stacked up in those. Like, we're not going to ever get rid of these guys completely. Um,
Yeah.
Certainly it'll damage them greatly, but
Well,
yeah.
right now, all the bankers have massive amounts of gold, and they started accumulating gold since J.P. Morgan really started accumulating silver and gold. Now,
Mhm.
J.P. Morgan amassed a hoard of over 1 billion ounces of silver, like 10 times what the Hunt brothers did, 10 times what Warren Buffett did in the late 90s. And then they got busted for it, and they did some kind of structured deal, booked $1 billion profit, and nobody knows what's happening to that silver now. I think it's going back to the U.S. Mint, and they're making coinage for the new system.
Here, and I get my silver G. I love that.
I love it.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the ways when I was first listening to you, I was like, this guy's like off his rocker. I mean, he's just off his rocker. But you knew about the silver story, and the silver story is something that I have been following for decades. And I said, if he's smart enough to see that, and you were articulating it very clearly, and you clearly understood what was going on there, I was like, well, that to me led more credence to everything else you're doing. And if we might summarize for those of you who have not kept up with me on the silver story, I've been telling people buy physical silver, buy physical silver. And the short story is, and I'll let you expound on it, is silver, all the silver and gold we've ever had in the entire planet, we had pretty much in form up until about the 1950s, right? It was in bullion, coins, whatever, precious stuff, jewelry. But in the 1950s, silver began to be used industrially in all kinds of things. We don't do it in photography anymore. It's a huge component of photography, but medical devices, it's got antibacterial qualities, it's super conductive, it's highly reflective, so really important mirrors in solar panels. It's a part of every piece of everything we're going to need going forward into this electric future without fossil fuels that is currently the big thing that is going on. And the thing is, though, it's just been the price has stayed down the whole time. It's been the price. They've actually made a lot of money by manipulating the price down, which is probably a bigger conversation than what we want to get into here.
We could do it quickly.
Yeah, I mean, sure, go for it. Yeah.
To me, the price suppression has been going on since the 1850s in silver with opium wars. England was buying all these spices, and so all the silver was going from England to China and not coming back to England. England was running out of money. They got mad, set up Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, now known as HSBC, to get the Chinese addicted to opium, which they did, and they had them pay in silver, so all the silver came back. There's been so many rig jobs on silver. The latest was Alan Greenspan's original computer programs. Yes, he was a computer programmer. That's where root A comes from. It's in the programming language. It's the base case of our financial system. He invented these computer programs not only to invent our electronic banking system that we have right now, but to help control and rig markets through the bullion banks, is what they call them. So silver's been rigged since the early 1970s, almost cut free with the Hunt brothers in 1980 when it went to $50. Paul Volcker set interest rates at 20%, but he also rigged the silver price, and the COMEX, which is the only exchange on the planet, said no more buyers of silver, only sellers. The price went from $50 down to $10. So that's an easy see of what happened in the rigging. And then it got into complete derivatives. So a derivative is it's selling paper silver promises, futures and options and swaptions, all these things, but not the real thing. And our entire silver market is based on these computer, electronic, high frequency trades going back and forth. And there is absolutely no connection with the price of silver and the physical silver that you need to get in your hands.
Yeah, two things to go back on that. One is that it first of all, it is astonishing to me that a global commodity and an essential, vitally important commodity such as silver, the only place where the price is determined is in the COMEX. And I mean, that right there should tell you there's a leverage point for absolute control and manipulation. So that's just shocking to me when I first realized that, like, oh my God, all you have to do is manipulate that price and you control the global price of this unbelievably essential commodity. The other thing is, when I first heard you talking about Alan Greenspan being a computer programmer, because, I mean, I used to love to listen to NPR, and they used to have this game back when he was the Fed chief, and they'd say, what did the Fed chief say? And then they would have this, him going on for a paragraph or two, and you'd be like,
oh yeah. And that's the amazing thing is that was his job. His job was to obfuscate and not necessarily lie, just put it in these terms that the general public would not understand, and control the markets. And that's what he did. I mean, he was very good at it.
He was very good at it.
All along, he was a gold bug. He was part of Anne Ryan's.
I have read that, and I've always seen that in his background prior to him becoming the Fed chief. And so I thought when he became the Fed chief, there would be a push toward a gold standard, and Yeah.
Well, see, that's the thing. It happens behind the scenes. Alan Greenspan got put as the head of the Fed in, I think it was August of 1987. And within 2 months, we had the Black Monday, the crash of 1987. 100% computer controlled, 100% Alan Greenspan pressing that button. I'm going to destroy the system. We're going to implement a gold standard. The stock market dropped like 50% or whatever it was. Same thing has happened in 2008. But always, every single time, it goes back to Congress, and Congress votes for a bailout because they've got us in this trap. The bankers have us in the trap of, if they go, we go. We lose all our life savings, our checking account, our savings account, everything we work for is gone. So we are trapped. We are absolutely trapped. The only way out is to let the trap, spring the trap, say, fine, yeah, I'll lose everything, but so will you. You will lose all this control over us. All debt would be erased. It would be, for most people, it would be a great thing. Most people, the biggest problem they have is debt. Same with countries. Most countries are massively in debt, including the United States. We're the largest debtor nation in the world, by the way. So, but it will be bad and hard to fathom that kind of world. And then it gets back to the Road to Ruda comic books. How do you reallocate money to people after the system,
after the collapse? What do you do? And how do you restart an economy after the global reserve currency, the US dollar, has clearly, and we're already on that. I mean, you can overlay the charts of, like, say, Weimar Germany with the money creation we got now, and we are lockstep with it. It's happening.
We will be the last global reserve currency, the last fiat global reserve currency that's unbacked, because trust will be gone. When the US dollar goes, a lot of people saying, no, the Chinese will take it over. Chinese don't want it. It's a horrible place to be, that you have the reserve currency. Yeah, you can buy anything you want. You can print as much money as possible, but everybody's going to be after you. Everybody's going to hate you for what you've done to the economic system. That's where we're headed. I mean, the US will have to go alone. No one will trade with us when this all falls apart. And our trading partners are already falling away.
We're already seeing, the whole OPEC thing is, and we're going to be, oil is now being sold in other currencies, which is destroying the hegemony, which we fought so hard all these years. That's what our military was for, from what I could see in my perspective. But let's go back to, let's go back to silver for a second. So my understanding is there's only about 1 billion ounces of silver that is, like, in a known usable.
No, well, I'd say known and usable. How much could we get if we melted down fillings? And there's been 60 billion ounces of silver mined in history, supposedly, but we're down to about 6 billion, because since the 40s we've been using it up in flat screen TVs and smart bombs, and you name it, silver's in almost every electronic component. So there's about 6 billion, but a lot of that will never come back. You're not going to melt your fillings down. A lot of the jewelry and things are worth more to the people who own them than the melt value of the silver. So we get to a point where there's about 6 billion ounces of gold too. So that gold silver ratio should be 1-to-1. Investable,
right in there is a real huge investment thing, because right now, silver, I'm thinking they let it go up to $21 an ounce. Woohoo! And then gold is at $17 an ounce. Right there, the value of silver, just even if there wasn't all this other manipulation and the fact the price should probably be, 10 or 100 times more, silver is so much better of an investment just because of its scarcity as relative to gold. Yeah.
And it's got a dual purpose. It's both a monetary metal and an industrial metal. Our life would completely change if silver was not available. If gold was not available, nobody would care. And that's kind of the beauty of it, because bankers have all the gold. They think gold is, that's their thing. No country around the world holds silver. No bankers hold silver. JP Morgan tried to, and it got taken away. Depends on where it goes. So it's really interesting. The gold silver ratio coming out of the ground right now is 7-to-1, but the price ratio with the rigged silver price is currently 88-to-1. At 88 ounces of silver for every 1 ounce of gold. If you have any gold, please go do the swap. Swap the gold for silver at your local coin shop, or you can call Miles Franklin. They're great with silver deals for customers. The reality of where I see it, and I did the research since 1971, 98.8% of the time, you'll do better when by owning silver than gold if the ratio is above 80. So if you own gold right now, you have a 98.8% chance of doing better in silver. Swap it all for silver and wait for that ratio to come back to something more reasonable. Even in the 30s and 40s, you'll make twice as much money. Or wait for it to go to its natural coming out of the ground ratio of 7-to-1, or even the above ground ratio, which is 1-to-1 right now. But as far as investable silver with all the ETFs, we find those are all 1,000-ounce bars. There's about 2 billion ounces of investable silver. And it might sound like a lot to some people. To these banks, it's nothing.
It's the tiniest commodity on the COMEX.
Yep.
And it always struck me as fascinating that the smallest, tiniest, I mean, because, tons and tons and tons of hog gets traded, or corn or wheat. I mean, it's just mega gazillion. And silver's this little tiny, 100 million ounce here and there type trades, and yet it is the absolute linchpin to the entire global financial system. So it's crazy.
And
But let's talk about gold for a second, because you have another, like, when you first hear of it, you'll be outlandish concept
story
that
of my
you've been
life.
Is that there's actually way more gold, and it's owned by the United States government than anybody can even imagine.
Yes, governments around the world have massive amounts of gold. The gold that I think you're talking about
is in the Grand Canyon.
when I was doing a bunch of research into gold. How much gold does the United States really have? Because there's a big conspiracy behind Fort Knox. Is that Fort Knox gold there? Is it not there? Has it been leased out? A lot of people say it's been leased out. Has it been refabricated so that it's not 100% gold now? It's more like 5% gold, just the gold plating around the bars. I believe, yes, that the gold in Fort Knox is there somewhere. U.S. is supposed to have 8,200 tons. But the reality is, I don't know if it's been leased out. I'm sure it has over the years, but it's not that much gold. See, front page of the New York Times, 1912, right before the Federal Reserve was created, or I think it might have been the second page. Vast quantities of gold found in the Grand Canyon, billions and billions of ounces. Now, remember, well, most people don't know, but there was about 110 million ounces in circulation in the United States, including at the banks, 110 million, not billion. They're saying there's billions of ounces. So I was like, wow, that would upset the entire
yeah, right.
And that was exactly the time when they went to Jekyll Island to have those meetings with the bankers, and came back, and Woodrow Wilson, who hated bankers, said, "Oh my God, what are we going to do? Okay, we're going to close up the Grand Canyon." They closed it for all mining. And because these big mining projects had started, and all of a sudden, boom, the lid was shut on that, which I think is great. It's the most beautiful place on the planet in my understanding and what I've seen. I've been there quite a few times researching this stuff. But what it also did, Woodrow Wilson allowed the Fed to be created to control this system until we figure out what to do. And so they've been controlling our unbacked fiat monetary system since 1913, mainly, I think, because of the gold in the Grand Canyon. Now, there's other huge troves of gold all throughout the United States. Most of them are in military bases, natural parks, places where you can't really go. Huge one at Chocolate Mountain, a military gunnery range that was exposed in the 90s. They flew all these congressmen out, but they don't tell anybody what's in there. And then there's if you get into the research, Sterling and Peggy Seagrave did a great research book, spent their whole lives documenting all the gold that was hidden in the Philippines, called Yamashita's gold. That was 300,000 tons.
Oh,
but the reality is, the mainstream will tell you there's only 200,000 tons that's ever been mined in the history of the world. So it's not jiving. And then I came to learn, after studying it for 20 years, that it's part of the game. You lie, cheat, and steal about supply and demand. You control the prices with computers and derivatives, and then you can run this unbacked fiat monetary system, soaking up all the benefits and running all your covert operations pretty much with immunity, because nothing matters to the price of gold and silver until it does. And when it does, it's over, and silver and gold will go into the thousands.
So there's all these stores of gold that we're not being told about that exist. Are there any of silver? Have you found any?
I have looked, yes, but absolutely, yes. I have looked high and low for it, and I found a 3 billion ounce hoard that was taken out of the U.S. Treasury in the 1940s to build these things called calutrons for the Manhattan Project. This was for the purification of the uranium to get, to make the first bombs to end the war and all that stuff. I'm not a fan of bombs, nuclear bombs especially. But I did find it. I did find proof that the U.S. military borrowed, quote, borrowed, didn't tell the public, 3 billion ounces of silver from the Treasury. It went in to make these gigantic magnets in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And then in the 1990s, when they were running out of silver, they shut down those facilities, remelted the silver, and that's where the supply of silver has been coming from since the 90s. I think it's gone now, but that's the only thing I've ever found.
Yeah, I was really shocked at that, especially when, like in 2003, I think the U.S. Mint went out and said we're all out of silver and we have to buy it on the open market now. The U.S. government, even without the Calutron stuff, was the world's largest holder of silver for a long, long time. But it's like gone. I'm like, what?
Gone now, yeah.
Yeah,
And that
right.
was a
So,
big controversy in the 80s within Congress. I have all these documents, like different sides of Congress saying, one side saying, no, we have to sell all our, our reserve silver. And other guys are saying, what are you talking about? That's money we're selling. We can't do that. And they ended up doing it. And they sold all their silver reserves. I think it was a total of 3 billion ounces, because mainly it wasn't there. It was over in the calutrons.
so, and which country is the world's largest producer of silver? How much? Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys remember when Trump said Mexico is going to pay for the wall. And everybody's like, no, they won't. That's
You're
ridiculous.
laughing like
That's
you get out of
ridiculous.
here. This is Trumpism.
I think
Yeah.
it's true. I think they're going to pay for the wall because they are the largest producer by far of silver. They have produced 33% of all silver that's ever been mined in history. And
Oh,
they
wow.
still have massive amounts of silver. Most are owned by mining companies that, they don't have Mexico's best interest in mind. So Mexico could have been the richest country in the world had they not done what they've done over the past 100 years. But that doesn't mean that they can't be in the future. As soon as silver's set free, Mexico will be probably the richest nation in the world, with at least with the current in-ground supplies. Now, the United States pretty much shut down all silver mining. And we had massive amounts of silver, like Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, all throughout California. But a huge effort, congressional effort, has been placed on shutting those places down. Environmental reasons, in a national park, save the spotted toad, you name it. They have California, actually 41% of California's land is owned by the federal government. So if you ever hear, Gavin Newsom say, we're going to secede from the union, when
No, you aren't.
I go, yeah, you go ahead, but you're going to lose all your riches, because no way the U.S. military is going to let you guys overtake this land that the U.S. military and the federal government own. It's complicated.
Well, I thought of another reason why that wall is going to get built. So we're looking at Europe right now, Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2, for whatever reason, and whoever, it doesn't matter. The fact is they're not getting the energy that they used to get. Like I don't know what it is, 55% of the energy going into Germany is not happening. And I can guarantee you that anybody in Northern Europe right now who has any resources, they are moving to Spain. They're moving to Greece. They're moving maybe to Northern Africa. They're like going to a warm climate. And that's coming here to the US. And I don't know if it'll be this winter or next winter, but we're going to see the same thing with fuel prices and energy prices and the cost of heating skyrocketing. And Bob in Minnesota is going to go, hey, Mexico's cheap and it's warm. I'm going to go to Mexico, or I'm going to try to go to Mexico.
And my friend Cliff High has done research, and we're headed into what was it called, the Mondor minimum, a mini ice age, if anything. So there's no global warming going on. It's exact opposite. And yeah, there will be a migration south. I don't know how fast things like that can happen, but it's one of those things is you think, oh, you got so much time, until all of a sudden you have a bad winter and it never thaws, and then it's over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, or well, like I said, if they cut off the energy or the energy prices get so high, that can really accelerate it way beyond. I mean,
But
because yeah,
yeah, also one of the things that in the Road to Ruda research I've done, the United States in the 1920s and 30s really changed their thinking about natural resources and shipped all their mining equipment to Russia, shipped everything out, put these huge EPA rules on mining in the United States of America, all because they knew they were running on a fiat monetary system. Why not use everybody else's stuff first and keep our stuff in the ground? And we have been
yeah,
living that for so long. It's so ridiculously cruel to force these countries into slavery of digging up our coal, our food, our precious metals, and then taking it all and giving them these unbacked fiat pieces of paper for their
paper.
real goods.
So let's go more into the immediate of like, so we are looking at a currency collapse here, and people go, how soon? I'm like, well, really within months or a year. I mean,
I
it
don't
could
I
be,
don't I don't think
yeah,
it could be I don't even think it can be a currency collapse. I think they can print as much currency as they want. What we're looking at is a derivative collapse and a banking collapse. The banking collapse is going to be the big one that wakes people up. These banks are way over leveraged. 10-to-1 is the standard, but they have derivative books. I mean, JP Morgan's derivative books at $60 trillion, and they have like three trillion in assets. So when that system falls apart, what's going to happen is there'll just be no more fiat money. You'll go to your ATM and there will be none there because of everybody trying to sell the same asset. It's great when you blow the bubble because everybody buys the same stuff. They buy houses and T-bills and all that. When it comes back the other way, it's like a fire hose through a Dixie cup, and there's just no buyers for what they're trying to sell.
and what are you do you have any rough ideas of a timeline that and I hate to put you on the spot like that, but
No, I
we're
know the
not keep
timeline. Absolutely.
okay.
1999 when I figured this stuff all out. That's it. I was like, yes, it's all going to collapse tomorrow. Um, all I can tell you is after doing this for so long that we're closer now than we've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And the big question always is like on September 1st or September 11th, sorry, September 11th of 2008. That was the day of the market crash where $500 billion came out of the money market funds, and they were looking at ending the whole system. Senator
Yeah,
Kanjorski came out and said that was the day, that was the hour. They decided to kick the can down the road and have printed trillions. We're going to have another moment like that. Now the
I
question
do. I do remember at that time I was watching that and I was like, "Oh my God, this is it."
it.
And but I totally underestimated the ability of them to print another $1 trillion and just keep it
Trillion is
going. But
nothing now, but yeah,
yeah.
I
But
mean,
back
a
then,
quadrillion.
back
Yeah.
then a trillion was, but people don't realize how close we were to like your credit card not working anymore. Like
You won't be worried about your credit card. It's the
yeah,
ATM. The
yeah, the
ATM
ATM.
is going to be the big wake up call for everybody.
There's no money. There's no money happening.
There'll be nothing.
But there's so many things going on in the world now that people are like, and I know you've done a good job about highlighting Evergrande, which is this huge property investment, kind of like, gosh, who can we compare that to? They've gone bankrupt, way past bankrupt, and the rating agencies are not declaring the bankruptcy. They're just going ahead and letting it all go along because if they declared bankruptcy, that would cause the implosion of this entire, derivatives bubble. And there's so many situations where there are just like too big to fail things that are just they're just saying, okay, well, we're just gonna ignore that for a while longer and not declare it, and
And
they're
bailouts behind the scenes.
bailouts like Swiss, the Federal Reserve. Why did they send, like, I think it's now $8 billion they sent the Credit Suisse to?
Well, that's just Credit Suisse. They sent $1 trillion to Switzerland to help bail out the big Credit Suisse and all the derivative bubbles there. Yeah, this is it, but money doesn't matter to them. It shouldn't matter to us either. It's electronic blips on a computer. They will spend anything. And that's what Ruda wrote in the sand back in the 1981 comic book, is this economic formula on the road to the golden age. You want to leave a gold standard, what do? You print money to infinity. And we're hitting infinity money now. So
We really are. So let's say this happens, the banking system does actually like boom, like, and so forget it. You no longer have a bank account. You no longer have an IRA or a retirement account. Or of course, you also don't have a mortgage.
Mhm.
Um, what next? How does that
That's
how
that's
does
the multi-zillion dollar question. And as a matter of fact, that is why the Federal Reserve put out a teacher's guide with the Road to Ruda comic book. What Alan Greenspan had recommended is that we reallocate money, whatever we use as our new money, probably gold and silver, because we don't have to vote on that. It's already in our Constitution. We'd reallocate gold and silver as money to the people, giving everybody a baseline amount, and then giving people more if they've bought into the system more. And you can use your Social Security balances as a guide to who's worked the most. And the ultra rich won't get much because Social Security payments cap out at like $100,000 or something like that. It was actually a pretty good idea, but the reality of reallocating money has so many pitfalls. That's why they had to put out this teacher's guide and had 65 unanswered questions. Do we nationalize mines if we're using gold and silver as money? Do we help the private industry, develop mines or develop oil fields? What do we do? And there are no questions because they all take deciders. And that's going to be our big problem going forward with a new system. Do you really want Joe Biden deciding anything for you, or Donald Trump deciding anything for you, or any politician deciding anything for you after they screwed up the system so badly and you've lost everything? No, they're going to have no moral authority to do that. We're not going to turn to the IMF or the WEF or the central banks. We're going to have to, that's why we hooked up with you guys. We're going to have to take care of ourselves
yeah.
in our communities and feed ourselves and clothe ourselves. And it'll take a while to get back on our feet. I do have hope that the Fed, knowing that this has been going on for over 100 years, I'm sure they have some plans. I think every country has some plans, but will the people accept it is the big question mark.
Yeah. And this, the other thing that happens with it, which is why the Grow Network was formed, is the bottom line, you're being able to eat every day will be, I mean, we've already got supply chain problems. We've already got inflation happening. I mean, the supply chain is going to stop when
you won't care about silver. You won't care about gold or your checking
no,
account. You care
yeah,
about
you'll care about, chicken and potatoes and yeah. So, and I see it as it's going to take a long time to get all that stuff going again. Your local farmers or your regional farmers or your supply systems or your trucking systems or your distribution systems or your larger scale agriculture. It just once it stops, it's just going to take a long time. So that's why I've been really harping. Everybody says, why don't you get into commercial farming? I'm like, no, I think that family and individual self-sufficiency and self-reliance is going to be the best bet for you to get through this period. But I too, like you, I'm very hopeful on the other side of this because really, quite frankly, our existing systems are the food they're creating is quite frankly toxic and is highly destructive to the planet. So although, doing it all at once overnight is probably not the best way to change the system, but everybody who with the good hearts that have been working for years to try and make the changes, it ain't effective. So, you know, if this is the way we're going, this is the way we're going.
It's really interesting to think because I mean, there's been congressmen who have been railing against this, for since we went on the Fed note back in 1913. I mean, one of the biggest proponents of going back to a gold standard was Howard Buffett, Warren Buffett's father, who Warren Buffett idolized. Huge speech in front of Congress saying, what are we people doing? We're the United States of America. We have to get back on our gold standard. These people are stealing our future and it's going to destroy our children and their children. But then generations just keep kicking the can down the road. And we need to stand up. We need to press the red button and say, I'm not going to do this to my kids and their kids. We need to take care of this problem now. I know we didn't create the problem, but we didn't help it. Since I've been born, 90% of the debt was created since I've been born. And it won't stop until we pull the plug, and pulling the plug will be painful. There's no doubt. but the pain felt of not pulling the plug will be 1,000 times worse. We just won't deal with that pain. Our kids will, and their kids will.
Yeah, you know, I also have done a lot of interviews with Lynette Zhang, who, oh God, Lynette, I love that last name. Totally describes her personality. Anyway, but her thing is she studies the life cycles of currencies, and so that like the U.S. dollar is now a senior citizen on life support, quite frankly, in almost every single case. And she studied thousands. There's really several thousand currencies that have gone and been hyperinflated and collapsed, and they in like 98% of them, they go back to a gold standard. So, like you can't beat the historical thing. Now, silver, of course, is way more precious than gold, but and I, also I agree. There's a period of time when gold or silver may not do you any good at all, but it ultimately will be a reserve of currency. And we also have the other thing of cryptos, which I absolutely will be a part of our future. Um, so the thing is to start shifting into that, knowing that there'll be a period of time when nobody knows what anything's worth, and you need to have your own supplies on hand, and you're probably going to need your own food supply for a long time anyway. You need to be off that commercial system anyway right now, just for
Absolutely.
your own health. So yeah, what a fascinating time we're headed into. And I really, really appreciate your work. It's just such an interesting insight, and honestly, it's very hopeful that yeah, this whole thing is going to completely implode, and it's a good thing. And actually, the insight that the Federal Reserve is actually a part of this and doing its best to destroy the banking system is another very hopeful take. I see.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not everybody at the Fed, mind you. There are people
Yeah,
at the Fed. There have been bad people within the Fed, but there's also been the good guys. And when you're at that level of banking, the system is not long for this world, the unbacked fiat monetary system. So, I mean, what they do is they just create more money and bail out, bail out, bail out until one day they don't. And I'd vote for it. I'm one in 330 million people in the United States. I vote for no bailout, even though I know the chaos it'll cost even to my family. I mean, my family
yep.
is knee deep in the system, and
Yeah,
so
that's like the Catherine Austin Fitts who used to talk about, she'd speak to groups about what's going on and explain the whole system and say, if you push this button, we can end it all. But there's going to be all this, you're going to lose all this. And she said, how many people in the room would push the button? And like almost nobody said, I push the button. Let me go
Well,
ahead.
she set it up first. First, she say who pressed the button to end the current system, and everybody raised their hand. And then she said, you would lose your savings account, your checking account, your 401k, probably cause chaos, probably cause rioting in the streets with no future way to move forward. Now, who would press that red button? And nobody raised their hands.
Yeah. So I totally get it. So a lot of the Grow Network, though, of course, is been fully aware that something is afoot on the planet, even though none of us really totally understand all the mechanisms. Anyway, Beck, how can people get you? You've got a great podcast. It comes out pretty much daily, and I especially love your private member area, and you have some really interesting guests and insights onto what's going on. And how can they reach you there? And then your membership. I don't have my coin with me, but Bix will give you a 1 ounce silver coin, which I think will ultimately more than pay for the whole membership. Plus, it's just a really fascinating collector's item. But how can they get a hold of you and join your membership? And there's also a lot of free stuff for those of you who just want to check him out and listen to some info.
I think the best way is subscribe to my YouTube channel, Road to Ruda. But also go to roadtoruda.com, and there's a free subscription email section on the left. You just put your name and email address in. I post anytime I post to YouTube or have something to say, I'll put out emails because I don't trust social media all that much. They've been who knows how long I'll be on YouTube. And then again, the private road, a 1-year subscription, all the behind the scenes stuff. I do a lot of interviews with people like Marjory and remote viewing guys and silver guys. And yeah, it's a really interesting time. And just by listening to what Marjory has to say, you're way ahead of your friends and neighbors. And
yeah. And also on the roadtoruda.com website, you have 2 videos that explain the whole
Yeah.
Federal Reserve comic book, and then the gold in the Grand Canyon, which I just found absolutely fascinating. So there you go, everybody. That's
Those are good ones to start with, because it's a strange concept, because everybody's trained fed bad, fed bad, fed bad. I'm like, wait, there's secret good guys behind the scenes.
it's we live in such crazy times, right? I had so many things in the last 20 years that I thought were true, and I'm even questioning if the planet is round anymore. Like I did we go to Mars? Did we go to the moon? Probably not. There's so many things that are just up for grabs. Like, why not that the Fed has written a comic book that's outlining the whole return to a gold standard? Like, that's no stranger than anything else that's going on these days. The bottom line, though, is if you want to eat, you do need to be growing your own food. And yeah, so anyway, head over to roadtoruda.com. Check out Bix. He's got some really great videos. And he's always, I love the news you give, like what's going on where and here and how it all interconnects, and really useful information. So thanks for coming on, Bix. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we're real excited about this partnership with you guys. And hopefully we can get all our communities together, because God knows our country politicians aren't trying to, unite everybody.
Oh, God, no. Yeah. Yeah. All righty. Thanks again.
Take care.